trying to put together a video with some election analysis, and I've seen plenty of other people's videos on the same subject, so I'm trying to think about how I can go at this and discuss something that hasn't been rehashed 1,000 times. And I'm kind of focusing on battleground states, and also I want to do a brief segment on how the Electoral College works and why it's important. Before I get to that though, I want to talk about what I was thinking. So I'm going through battleground states, and I'm trying to analyze Wisconsin, okay? Wisconsin, Michigan right now, Pennsylvania, one of the Carolinas, Florida, right? They're calling these the battleground states. So they were calling Minnesota one this election, and I don't know why they stopped. I think Minnesota's typically blue, I think. So I'm guessing that they've had some polling results that just made them decide to stop talking about it because it's probably going to go blue. So I'm thinking about how to determine whether or not Wisconsin's going to go one way or the other. And I'm thinking about a few things that I've seen. So there's been some scandalous shit. And because, as it always happens, the same reason I don't usually watch news. News has been a recent thing. It's just because, you can only hear so much fucking bullshit, especially repeated to you. It just becomes propaganda. When you say the same fucking thing over and over again, especially when it's something really short and to the point, as nice as it is to have something wrapped up in a small point so you can make your fucking point, you're also just then becoming a propagandist and repeating the same fucking thing, like the BLM. Fucking propaganda. Again. Just to be fair, of course, propaganda points, as I call them, they come from ideas, but still. So I generally ignore the news, ignore this kind of shit. I haven't been able to lately, and it's the same with trying to figure this out. I'm looking at yards, okay? How many Biden signs, how many Trump signs? That's one good way to determine it. Now, you go through the city of Milwaukee, it's Biden to the fucking hilt. You go outside the city of Milwaukee into the suburbs, it's a mixed bag. It's about even, for the most part. You get into certain suburbs, and most of the rural area is pretty much exclusively Trump. So, I guess a lot of you shaking your head going, yeah, white people. Kinda. There are a couple of small towns that are real strong Biden, but for the most part, anywhere you're going, if you're seeing something, you're seeing Trump. What you really need to analyze is the city. Because in Wisconsin, Milwaukee County, Dane County, Racine, Kenosha County hold the majority of the population. So the way Wisconsin works, I had to check this, was popular vote determines how the Electoral College votes are cast. So if there's 10 million, I don't know exactly how many people, if there's 10 million people, one fucking vote ahead, both the electoral votes have to go to that candidate. So in analyzing Milwaukee and trying to figure out, well, how many people in Milwaukee actually support Trump, how many support Biden, versus how many aren't going to vote. And I think this year just about everybody's going to vote. I know people that I've known for my whole life that always tell me, fuck voting, it's a waste of time, one vote don't matter. Like, yeah, fuck, I'm voting this time. I can't help it. I think I'm actually going to vote. So I'm going to say most people are voting. So how do you figure out what they're really thinking? Well, of course, you watch stuff like the debates and try to get a feel for it. But you've seen these debates have been a bit of a debacle. The first debate was tough. Trump lost his fucking patience. Did not make himself look good to the more moderate person who doesn't like his personality in the first place. And aside from that, the moderator was, was going at him. Just like the moderator in the second debate who got booted. They didn't end up having the second debate. I'm sure you heard by now that dude got in trouble because drunk texting fucking Trump. It's weird. For whatever reason, he's blowing up fucking Trump with these tweets, these weird tweets, and then he tried to say that he fucking didn't have control of his phone. And C-SPAN, which is generally more liberal, not like CNN, but it's generally more liberal, fucking fired him over it. So he must have, I didn't even read it, he must have really said some dumb shit. The first debate, hostile moderator. Second debate, had it happened, definitely a hostile moderator, but it didn't happen. Town halls, I watched all of Trump's, I watched a portion of Biden's. I was going to watch all of Biden's and do a video just on that, but truth is, some of the shit he said, man, is fucking crazy, and they don't ask him tough questions, and it's just not, you're not, and honestly, even with the Trump town hall, people who already support that candidate are pretty much more affirmed in their positions, or they just watch it and watch along and nod. No information was really given to the public of the actual undecided voter. I don't think that many people are undecided. I think, like, I've seen a couple of these stations do panels with these undecided voters. I think they're fucking lying. They already know what way they're leaning. They just say that they're not sure because they want to act like, they want to be fucking courted for their vote. But it's fucking hard to not have an opinion. So for the very few of truly undecided voters, whatever percentage of the population that is, a smaller percentage, no new information has come out due to the standard ways that information would come. If you want to analyze that, it's fucking hard for everybody, including people who actually do this kind of shit all the time. Me personally, so I'm looking around at yard signs. Now we're talking about Milwaukee. Milwaukee's got a ton more Biden signs. Milwaukee's also got a lot of illegally placed Biden signs. You have to understand the difference between Trump signs and Biden signs. Trump's got his Trump Pence 2020, and he's got a couple of variations of that. I've seen a few of them, like Make America Great Trump 2020 or Keep America, whatever. A couple of those. But for the most part, that's what you get from the Trump campaign, national and local. Now, there are a couple of offshoots, like the Black Voices for Trump. I know there's Latinos, women, right? That's not the case, though, with Biden signs. Biden signs are different. So what are you talking about? How are they different? I'll tell you exactly how they're different. You got the standard Biden-Harris signs, right? And you've got a ton of those everywhere. Then you've got the anti-Trump signs, of which there are many. And there are many variations. And there are one or two of those that are put out by the official Biden campaign, but there are a shit ton of those. I couldn't even tell you how many I've seen. And I'm sure across the country there are so many more. There are so many variations of those that are put out by different political organizations that essentially, let's just call them Act Blue. They're not put out by Act Blue, they're put out by other similar organizations. They are not sanctioned directly by the campaign, but they are made by the same people who fund the campaign. And there are a lot of them. Also, there are signs about healthcare, right? There's this one I see all over the place that says you want Obamacare. And then you read the little paid for by it. It's paid. This is not affiliated with or endorsed by the Biden campaign. This is paid for by. But then you go and you look that group up, and every one of these groups pretty much ties back to Act Blue, or it's under the umbrella. So they are Biden signs. What they are, though, is they're a way for people to stick those signs out there without having to adhere to the same rules that the political campaigns adhere to. Then you've also got the signs about candidate issues, and one of them I saw, it's got like 4 check marks. It says, read that one, not endorsed by the Biden campaign, paid for by. But again, you look that fucking company up, and I'm just not going to go through it. You just have to believe me. All right, there's a ton of those fucking sites. So when I say Biden signs, I mean the whole array. Because what you see with the Trump signs are the Trump 2020. Well, when you get to Milwaukee, especially in certain neighborhoods, the progressive and liberal neighborhoods and in the hood, they're everywhere. And I don't mean in yards everywhere, though they are in some yards. They are all over the fucking medians. And they are also in between, in many instances, they are in between the sidewalk and the street. Where a lot of cities will have 1 to 2 feet of grass, maybe 3 feet. And I had to check on that. Even though a person who owns a property there, residential or business, is usually responsible for the upkeep and condition of the sidewalk directly in front of their place, from the sidewalk out to the street is city property. Therefore, For medians, for sure, and those spots are not legal spots to put a political sign, because you can't put political shit on public property, at least in Wisconsin. I don't know how it is other places. So a lot of these signs aren't even supposed to fucking be there, and they're there in clusters. You can tell that groups of people went out and just stuck a bunch of them in. They'll stick them, a quarter-mile stretch down the roadway. You'll see 10, 20 signs. Most of them will be the same, and then there'll be one or two of those variations. You can see that there's a fuck ton more money, and if you had to really try to speculate without speculating, a little more desperation coming from the Biden side. And why is that important? Well, there is something that a lot of people have talked about. I'm sure you could tell this just by talking to any person who has an opinion about this election, which, like I said, lately has been just about everyone. There's a lot more enthusiasm with people who are supporting Trump. I've already explained my theories on this. Trump's an independent, reshaping the party, very direct, right? Not really seeing much with Biden, a little bit over Harris. However, for as many people as she has getting all hardcore over her because she's female, because she's black, you've also got a lot of people, including black people, who are going, doesn't count. Fuck that. Fuck her. She puts fucking black people in jail. Black people, I don't know. She puts black people in jail. She has. Now all of a sudden she don't want to do that no more, so fuck her. Makes sense. It's logical, because sometimes you got to go by a person's actions over a long period of time. You can't go by what they say. Anybody can change, can make modifications, but when somebody does that, they got to, show me, right? Which is another argument used against Biden. 47 fucking years. Show me something significant you've done besides the crime bill, which I don't think anybody really says is a great thing. And you're hard-pressed to find anything. I mean, at this point, and I gotta admit, I haven't researched that hard, even though I watched some of his Senate hearing tapes. At this point, though, the left would have something they'd be throwing out there. We'd be hearing about it. Not hearing anything. So yeah, he ain't got much to say for 5 fucking decades in the Senate. I don't know. I'm not a senator. What do I know? Okay. With this kind of data, what do I think? Well, I also get a lot of stuff in the mail addressed to me, not to resident, that says, are you registered to vote? Now, that's another kind of sign that you see, and there's another thing I get in the mail all the time, says, make sure you register, and it talks about voter registration, absentee ballots, mail-in ballots, and it's hard to track some of those down where they come from, but I guarantee you it's not coming from the Republican Party. In fact, I asked the Republican Party, I said, I keep getting these things in the mail, where do they come from? And he goes, I don't know, you'd have to go to the website. He says, but they're definitely not us. He says, they're definitely not us. They're not any group associated with us. He goes, it's somewhere in there, you'll connect it to the Democrats. I'm like, that's what I thought. So I get several of those a week. Can't even tell you how many text messages I get a week. Don't even know how they got my fucking number. Send me these messages, often addressed to me by my first name. So I don't know who they bought this information from. I'm fucking pissed. Asking me if they can count on me to do the safe, smart thing and vote by mail. Some of them directly asking me, do you support Biden? But I get a lot of those. So again, it reeks a little bit of desperation. Also shows, though, that they got a fuck ton more money. But, how you spend your money is important. So how concerned are you? I mean, these people spend a lot of money on this. Now, the bots sending out text messages don't cost that much once you have the system in place. You just have to buy the numbers. The mailers cost a little bit more, and paying people to go out and put all them signs out costs more. I mean, I got a really telling text message the other day, and it said, saying was, we recognize that Facebook and Twitter have been on the political agenda helping us, but YouTube, Google, first of all, they're fucking way left. They were pissed off about the results of the election. They even talked about, and it got leaked, they talked about modifying their algorithm to shape the way that this election turns out. So YouTube ain't no friends of nobody, okay? They're definitely left-leaning. They're just not as outward about it as Facebook, which also owns Instagram now, and Twitter. That's Zuckerberg and fucking Dorsey. But I thought that was really telling. So how do you pick a winner? I don't know. But the reason I started this video is I wanted to talk about that. Electoral college will be next, but the reason I started this video is because I started to think to myself, another thing when you're analyzing these signs and you're in these neighborhoods is not only how many Biden signs do you see, though that's definitely part of it, but it's also how many Black Lives Matter signs or other things that are similar to that do you see. Why do I say that? Well, I know that the polling number, what they show for support for the organization, dropped significantly from June and July. They went from having only fringe support to like 70% of the country supported them, and they're down to in the 30s. But it's also important because I'm just trying to, now this is a thought exercise here. I'm trying to imagine myself as a black person, and I'm like, well, who the fuck do I vote for? And there are a lot of like famous black people I could point to and go, look at how they analyze, look at how they, all good, the most recent one being Ice Cube. That shit's really interesting because I put up that video. If you didn't watch, it's 2 minutes long. It says Ice Cube just get red pilled. Man, I tell you, I was making a joke, not because it ain't true, but I was making a joke because I was like, Ice Cube said something that could almost be construed as positive toward Trump, and he gets crucified, right? Dude, but since then, he's talked to a couple of people about this, and he's starting to see. The more that he says anything about Trump that isn't Trump's a piece of shit, Trump's a racist, Trump don't give a fuck about black people, the more that he says anything that aren't those statements, the harder the resistance. He ain't stupid. He's seen, he's like, man, how come these people are fucking trying so hard? Why are they so mad? Why are they trying so hard? All I'm doing is trying to seek information and get something achieved for the fucking community, and everybody's hating on it. How does that make it? So I think he actually is getting red pilled. So tons of other people we could look at, but I'm just trying to imagine myself. I'm a black dude, right? Let's say I'm 45, 50, put right in the middle, like 50 years old, right? Just considering the year you'd be born, right? When you were kids, you still knew people that had experiences with segregation, right? Other black friends or family members, especially if you lived in the South. But you definitely heard about it regardless of where you live, right? When you're a kid. You've had some experiences with that. So you got some, and then you've seen a couple of other things throughout your lifetime, race-based, and you're like, oh shit, look at this. Like the riots in fucking 92 or whatever, right? In LA over Rodney King. And other fucking things relating to race. Whether it's race and police, whether it's race and poverty, race and social class. You've seen several things, and I'm just trying to imagine you're a regular person and you're not an activist. You're also not a fucking criminal, right? Just a regular guy. And every once in a while, somebody starts to talk about race and the actual conversation dialogue gets opened up. It could be a new activist starts to get popular, gets some news time, you follow him a little. But I'm just trying to, like I said, I'm trying to imagine. I saw this black dude, and every time somebody starts to open up a discussion about how does these racial issues happen, how do these disparities happen, et cetera, and what could we do, what things could be different, whether it's people's fucking attitudes, whether it's legislation, etc. Every time something happens, there's always some fallout and it don't go nowhere. And I just got to imagine if I was a black person, I'd be fucking frustrated. Now, I'm not talking about a black person who spends all their time saying how the fucking, I'm being direct here, right? Being real. I'm talking about a black person who spends all their time saying the fucking white man did this, the white man's made it so I can't make no money. So not just a regular fucking dude, okay? But still, you want to see some shit improve, and every time somebody starts talking about it, they either take it in a fucked up direction or nothing comes of it. I got to imagine as a black person there's a lot of fucking disappointment there. So when I was looking at all these Biden signs all over like the hood, specifically the black neighborhood, that the lower income, the poor area, a lot of gun violence, gangs, drugs, etc. A lot of Biden signs over there, a lot of signs about Obamacare over there, a lot of signs about all kinds of shit, like where versus as you go into the progressive white liberal neighborhood, you get a lot of Biden signs, but then instead of like the Obamacare ones, you get the ones that say anyone but Trump, just like a couple different angles coming at the same fucking thing, right? You don't get an anyone but Trump in the fucking hood. I mean, I haven't seen one, but you do get other shit, right? But what I noticed a huge disparity of is BLM signs in the hood. You get a lot of them in the progressive area. You get some of them spread out throughout the suburbs. But when you go up in the hood, man, you see a couple of them. Sometimes you'll see a Black Lives Matter sign, and that'll be it. That'll be the only thing in the window. But you go into the progressive area, like the area Burnell lived in and was killed in, you get Black Lives Matter, and a no justice, no peace, and a graphic of a fucking fist in the air, and 2 or 3 all in the same house. And then you have several houses like that. So the sentiment is a lot stronger in the more white communities. Well, why is that? Well, how does that make sense? I'll tell you exactly why. Because black people don't really, like, they're all for it. This is my opinion. They're happy that somebody's paying attention, but so many fucking times before, they've just been like, man, we get some momentum going, all of a sudden people want to talk, and then something happens. Doesn't matter what. Somebody takes the fucking idea in a fucked up direction, it don't work. A bunch of black people who are getting some publicity do some stupid shit, defeats the argument. Or some fucking white people get involved and then nobody wants to listen anymore. Something always happens, right? And I think that it's kind of the same thing with this. That's why they don't really have very much support in that area, because people over there be like, yeah, okay, cool, do something. And what do? Well, we're going to go into a fucking white neighborhood and keep everybody awake. What in the fuck does that do for us? A kid just got shot 2 streets over last week. 3 more people got fucking shot this week. What the fuck does that do for us? That is, if I had to pretend best I can, that's kind of how I think a lot of people up there feel. So how's that translate in voting? I'm not sure, but that's the best analysis I can give you of that. I'm sorry, I just wanted to talk about that sideways thought I had. And then real quick, because I had to have this re-explained to me from high school. So why is the Electoral College important? All right, I remember 2000, Gore beat Bush with the popular vote. Bush still won. However, there was some fucking shenanigans in Florida with the court because they decided that they couldn't recount the votes. But I remember that the votes have been recounted in Florida once or twice already because they couldn't decide which way Florida's Electoral College votes, because I was going to give the election. And in the end, the Supreme Court of Florida, which was controlled by Bush's brother, stopped the recount. But honestly, I think it was like the 3rd recount. So I don't know enough about the small part of the election to know if that recount really should have been done because there was a problem, or if that was just Democrats stalling. But I do remember hearing how in the fuck, and thinking at that time, how in the fuck can a person who loses the popular vote win the Electoral College? The Electoral College doesn't make any sense. And we've been hearing a lot lately about these things that we've all heard from high school but don't really have as firm a grasp on as we probably should, like the filibuster of the Electoral College. Why is the Electoral College important? Okay, so the Senate and the Congress is representative of how many people are in your state. That's why Congress has a very large and odd number of people. That's why certain states have 1 or 2 or 3 congressmen, and some states have 20. But the Senate always has two senators from every state, whether it's fucking Idaho or New York. Senate is set up like that because if it's only done by population, then the smaller states will never have equal representation. So you have 2 houses, one based on population, one based on the fact that you're a state. It's for diversity of thought. In the end, to be 573, I think, is what it equals totals. It has to be an odd number, of course. New York has just under 30 million people, and New York has 29 Electoral College votes. Wisconsin has 6 million people and 10 Electoral College votes. The only thing I don't have an answer for is how the amount of electoral votes was determined in the first place, but I know that it's been the same for a while. So Wisconsin may have 10 electoral votes, but we only have 8 congressmen. So the 8 congressmen is representative of the population. I don't know how high the population has to influx for us to gain another congressman, but I'm sure there is a number. In New York, where they have 29 electoral votes, they have 27 congressmen or state representatives. So this number for each state was determined a while ago, and it's determined based on something aside from population. Essentially, it's the checks and balances system, the 3 branches of government, and then the checks and balances inside of the 3 branches, this being the legislative branch. So if you had the ability to flux your Electoral College votes, or to pull Electoral College votes from another state, by pulling population, because remember, Wisconsin has 10 votes, right? You only have to win by one vote, 3,000,001 to 2,999,000, essentially, to have all of the Electoral College votes go for one candidate. So if you pull all the people who are going to vote the way that you want to your state, the state still goes red, which it was going to do before. But if it fluctuates your number of votes, instead of having 10, now we would only get 5. Now you got 5 that go red, and the other 5, which would have went red, now go the other direction. That's why you can't do it. It's just like what they're trying to do in Texas, why you hear the Republicans and their talking points like why you can't just give illegal immigrants status and allow them to vote. Well, they're not people. You don't think they're real people? No, it's because you just want to pull people in from all over and swallow the voting numbers. That's not fair. It's not legal currently. It shouldn't be legal, and it's not a fair thing to do. It tarnishes the election, because if they just went by general population in the country, you wouldn't be able to get the diversity in the vote. If the Electoral College wasn't set up where each state had the exact same number of votes, and that doesn't change just because the population influxes, that prevents those states from making policy for the rest of the country. So even though New York has a shitload more people, city of New York and the state, they only have a slight amount more of Electoral College votes, because this is done so that the voting is more representative of the overall consensus of the country and doesn't just get sucked into a huge population center like New York City, or Los Angeles, as well as prevents a state like New York, who has 29 Electoral College votes, who has 30 million people, from the year before an election that they want to win, like this year, flooding the state with 1 million or 2 million or 5 million voters. If a state like Wisconsin, let's say Wisconsin's going red, and let's say it's even 60%. Let's say 40% of the state, 3 million people, are voting for Biden and the rest are going for Trump. If New York were able to take the 3 million people, even if temporarily, and move them to New York long enough to vote, increasing while being able to increase their amount of Electoral College votes and decrease, say, Wisconsin's amount of Electoral College votes, they could just bully through the election. One other factor that's hard to account for this election is what they call the shy voter. I'm not sure if that's a new term, maybe not, but it's definitely got a new definition in this election, because I've said this before, when you were living in a very blue area, it is hard to show outward support for Trump. In fact, with the violence that we've seen in the last 6 months, and I do mean everything, but more so specifically Brunel getting killed, that dude in Portland that was part of a Trump rally getting killed, that dude in Denver who was part of a Trump rally getting killed. You really got to wonder, if I'm supporting Trump and I'm in a very liberal area, what could happen? So I've taken to seeing yards that have no sign as almost an endorsement for Trump. Plus, it's hard to tell in some of these super liberal neighborhoods, especially when it's a liberal neighborhood with houses, not apartments. And I'm thinking about the area by the lake in Milwaukee, for example. A lot of $1 million+ homes, high tax bracket, but very liberal. So there are a lot of Biden signs, and I'm wondering if some of those people in those neighborhoods, because they talk to their neighbors, say, hey, can we put a Biden sign in your yard? I got an extra Biden sign. You want one? I'm wondering if some of those people put those signs in their yard just because they don't want to have that conversation. They don't want to say no. Like, if somebody goes into one of those areas and says, hey, I know you're supporting Trump, I'm supporting Trump, let me put, I live in the suburb 20 minutes away from here where nobody's likely going to trash my house. Let me put a Trump sign in your yard. You might say, fuck no, because you know that the BLM will show up. I mean, it's that bad around here. Somebody will definitely tear the sign out, for sure. If you put a couple of signs, big sign, they will actually show up and start calling you a racist. I mean, you don't have to know them. They don't know you. They will do that. So, in the absence of a Trump sign, is almost like support. And I want wonder if a couple of the Biden signs, not a lot of them, 5%, 10%, I wonder if some of those are people who are either undecided or are pro-Trump but just don't put a sign up because they don't want to have to deal with the potential fallout because of where they live. So the shy voter is a big deal. And, you know, I can give a good example of that in myself because I get these questions all the time through text message and through mailers saying, who are you supporting, which way are you leaning, and I don't answer them. And honestly, it got to a point a couple of times where I was just like, yep, I'm going for Biden. Because I knew that they're coming through this, you know, like I was saying, the parent company or umbrella, they're under the umbrella of Act Blue in one way or another. Like, yep, I'm just going for Biden just because that way then they just leave me alone. Because if I say Trump, they want to talk about it. And they want to talk, don't you like this? Don't you want this? Because I don't know how these people got my fucking name in the first place. It's like I said, this is not addressed to resident at, and then it's these things are sent to me, they have my name on them. These text messages that I'm getting say hi, and my fucking, hi D, and my fucking first name. And I'm like, what the fuck? Who are you people? And I got a new phone recently too, and they're coming in on my new number that nobody should have, except for the few people I've given it to. I don't use this number for any registration, for anything. Like, I don't use it as my online. I got a second number for all my online shit, like where it says use a phone number to back up for like YouTube and Facebook, Twitter, those kinds of things, emails. Use a phone number to back it up. I don't use these numbers. I don't know how these fucking people. So I'm not going to tell them. I'm not going to give them any information that they could disseminate to somebody else.